So a bold person, when they wake up in the morning, they're going to wake up and face whatever the day has to offer or whatever the day is going to bring them. There were days where I had some hard days. I just didn't want to do it. When I'm getting up every day and I'm facing the day or facing a new challenge or facing something at work or facing something personal, that I'm facing those challenges with somebody that's bigger than me, and that's God.
Go to my website, www.boldbossyblessed.com, and use discount code BBB Podcast to get a discount on this week's featured ebook, Supercharge Productivity, where you'll learn how to increase productivity in your life and your business by 20%. Welcome to the Bold, Bossy, and Blessed podcast. I'm your host, Nikisa Green, your conversationalist, where you can join me weekly as I discuss and share parenting, dating, and relationships, one conversation at a time. Now let's get into it. Yes, let's get into it, y'all. What's up? Welcome to the Bold, Bossy, and Blessed podcast with your host, Nikisa Green, your favorite conversationalist. On today's show, we are going to be talking about the next two components of my title, which is Bossy and Blessed. But before I get into today's topic one, go ahead and listen to this important information. Make sure you're following me on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Nikisa Green. And if you would like to email the show, you can email us at boldbossyblessed@gmail.com. You can also follow the podcast page on YouTube and Instagram at Bold Bossy Blessed. And don't forget to check out my website, www.boldbossyblessed.com. Let's get into episode 2, topic 1, which is bossy. So the word bossy has always had a lot of different meanings to it. So when I was talking to you all on my episode 1 about why I named my show Bold, Bossy, and Blessed, the bossy part I think is the part that people mostly want to know more about. And that's because, when you hear the word bossy, you automatically think of a rude boss or a rude person or somebody that is negative or demanding. But I just want to shed some more information about what bossy means when it comes to this podcast. So bossy to me is a person that makes boss moves. A boss is a leader, it's a business owner, it's a person that takes ownership of their life and their business. They manage people. So let's just talk about some of the differences between a boss and what you may have heard about the word boss. So for me, being bossy does not mean that you are rude or mean. Being bossy means that you are a leader, that you lead by example, and that you manage the people that are under you, whether they are workers on your team, whether they are people that you are mentoring. You make sure that you are motivating them, that you're giving them what they need to succeed in whatever capacity that they're in. A bossy person that makes boss moves is creative. They are innovative. They bring different ideas to their team, and their team makes it happen. When it comes to the word bossy, when I am talking about being bossy, I am not talking about being bossy to other people. I am talking about being a leader in your own right and making sure you are leading the people that are under you well, that you are able to make adjustments, to change. We all know that nothing stays the same. Even you and I, nothing stays the same. And if something is not growing or evolving, they are pretty much considered to be dead, because everything that's alive, it grows and it evolves. And that's what a bossy person is. They are a leader that continues to evolve and grow They know how to adjust to the different changes that happens in life. And so some bossy moves that I've made in my life, I just want to share a few because there are definitely a lot of different bossy moves that I made in my life, but I want to share a few. So we all know COVID happened roughly about almost 3 years ago. Can't believe it's been 3 years already. But when COVID happened, everything shifted. Like everybody had to adjust to living in the virtual world who were not used to or accustomed to living in the virtual world. I was working in the office, but we got sent home. And so we went from being able to go out, interact with people, go out and meet people while we were out, but now we started being in a virtual world where we had to do everything virtually. And this podcast is pretty much virtually, which is that's one of the boss moves that I made back when COVID was going on, was creating this podcast, Bold, Bossy, and Blessed. And it was through that year that COVID happened that birthed this new podcast with me. Now I had already had another podcast that I do with another co-host and who was also my producer. Shout out to I Dream Media. And our podcast is called Relationship Hotspot. So I was accustomed to doing a podcast, but doing a solo cast where I'm doing the podcast by myself was not something that I knew how to do per se. I had to learn how to do that. And one of the things that I'm glad I'm doing for this season is having a producer, which having a producer takes so much weight off of you, whereas you're able to be that creative person that you are and partner up with somebody that's able to bring your vision to your podcast to the world, basically, because it's the world that's listening to this podcast. See how I'm just speaking everything into existence? So, boss move that I made was starting the podcast. The second boss move I made was starting my own t-shirt line. And the t-shirt line is basically it's God is faithful and I'm grateful. And I started that t-shirt line without knowing anything about apparel, about clothing, about anything as it relates to having a t-shirt business. And what I had to do was get on YouTube, get on social media, Instagram, TikTok, and listen to these videos of people that had already done it before I came along and try to get some tips from what they had learned and apply that to mine. One thing that happened while COVID was going on was that I made a lot of purchases of different clothing and t-shirts, and I learned a lot when it came to that from being a consumer to turning into a business owner of my own t-shirt line. And one of the things that I learned is that I wanted to make sure that when it came to my t-shirt line, that the quality of my t-shirt was going to be great. There were t-shirts that I ordered during COVID and it was hard cotton. It was, faded out after one wash. It just wasn't up to par to the quality of apparel that I like to have. So when I started my t-shirt line, that was one of the major things for me. And so I went into a store that had merchandise and I wanted to feel and touch the material. I wanted to feel and touch what my consumers were going to have. And I also wanted to wear it and, go through the washes. So I did that first. And I was able to pick material that I feel like my customers would enjoy once they received it in their home. And they have. I'm very glad that the quality of my t-shirt apparel is up to par. So that was the second boss move that I made in the last couple of years since COVID, which also brings me to my point of when we are faced with challenges or we're faced with an epidemic, because that was new to me. I mean, I know we've had some in the previous years, but I wasn't born yet. But these obstacles and these changes that's going on, even now with the economy, inflation, and recession, even now, there are businesses and gifts inside of you that you can be birthing right now and not waiting till later on. Like right now, you can make a boss move. Right now, a dream that you've had can come to fruition if you just go ahead and research what you need to research to make it happen, and then just start it. You don't have to wait on anybody to give you permission. You don't have to wait on anybody to find out what it is that you need to do. Whatever gifts that you have inside of you, package it up and do whatever that it is that you feel like God has placed inside of you for you to do. And for me, with having my t-shirt line, like when I say that it's a declaration, I really mean that, because whenever I wear my t-shirt, I am always running into people who read my t-shirt, and it could be any race, any age. They always stop me. We always have a conversation about God or a testimony about God. But the first time I ever got stopped with the t-shirt was when I was at Starbucks, and I was leaving Starbucks, and I'm getting in my car, and it's a older Caucasian man following me, like he's saying stuff, but I'm like, okay. So I get in the car first and I roll my window down, like, okay, so it's an older guy. Okay, what's up? I'm like, he's not harmless. So I'm like, hi. And he was like, hi, I just wanted to say that I really loved your t-shirt. Like, wow, I really love God, and God has just have been so amazing to me over my life. I just really love that. And I was like, thank you. And then it was that moment that I realized that, whoa, like this t-shirt is powerful. So from then on, I will always get stopped. I would be at the airport getting stopped, like people talking to me. But one other instance that I wanted to talk about was I was in the office standing in line. I think I was sitting down waiting for my number to be called. And it was a lady that was sitting on the other side of the room. And I'm just looking around like normal, and she was trying to get my attention, and I'm like, okay, like, hi. And she was like, mouthing to me, but I don't read words. I don't read lips, y'all. I can't read lips. So that doesn't work with me. So she came over and she was like, I just want to say thank you for your t-shirt. And of course she didn't know it was my t-shirt line, but she was just saying that the t-shirt. And I'm like, okay, thank you. You're welcome. And she was like, she's like, I've been having so much of a rough time right now that I needed to read that. I really needed to read that God is faithful, and that I'm grateful, because she said it's just been so hard for me. And I was able to talk to her and have a conversation with her about God, and get her in a place where she really felt confident that God had visited her that in that moment, because she was able to get strength again. You know how you need a second win sometimes when you feel like you get knocked down, and then you get that second win. So she was able to get her second win. And I was just like, okay. So whenever I have this t-shirt, and my consumers, the people that buy it, my clients, people that buy this t-shirt, they always have testimonies for me around this t-shirt. So now I'm like, this is a declaration statement. Like, this is just what it is. Like, it's a declaration saying that God is faithful, and I'm grateful. And so that leads me to my next topic that I want to get into, which is the word blessed.
Well, this is how I look at it, man. I believe that you should, some of us have been through so much pain. I look at my mom, and, I go back to my grandmother had 14 kids. And I used to be like, wow, they went through so much. But my grandmother went through so much. And I tell my mom, like, wow, y'all went too much not to get something for it. Like, it makes absolutely no sense that you went through that type of adversity. You got pregnant at 17. And you didn't write a book about it. You didn't do a movie about it. Like, you didn't get nothing from it. So for me, I kind of look at it as, why would I go through all that I've gone through and not benefit from it, not get a reward from it? So every single adversity I go through, I name it. So my childhood, I named it The Secrets to Success, a book, right? My corporate struggles I went through, working a job, I named it Greatness is Upon You, the book. Did an audio book that's right now #1 in the country. We're up for a finalist award for the best, motivational book in this year. And so I name my adversity. It does not make sense to go through something if you're not going to get a reward for it. So you think about it, man. You just said you had triplets, right? You went through all that pain. Like I'm sure you picked up weight. I'm sure, there was times where, your body was aching, and as you got close to having a child, I'm sure it was a excruciating pain. Then you drop one, you got two more to go, right? So you know all about pain. You know all about, okay, I push one out, okay, here go another one, all right, boom, here go one more. You know all about that. So for me, I believe that every piece of adversity that you go through, you should name it. That what am I going to get from this? $1,000, $100,000. A business is going to come from this. I'm not sure for you. A CD is going to come from this. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm telling you, what you have to start doing is saying that at the end of every obstacle I go through, 40 weeks is what? A child. You don't go through all that pain and not have a child. And what does the word say? Immediately when you have that child, you do what? You forget the pain. Why? Because something came out of it. And I think the only time adversity bothers us, the only time we have a challenge with adversity is when we go through all of that and we don't have the child. We don't have that gift. We don't have that prosperity. So to me, adversity is not even a negative thing because I've cashed in on it.
Wow, y'all. Just listening to that phone conversation that I had with Eric Thomas just brings back so many emotions for me. So the backstory to that phone conversation was I was in the business some years ago, maybe almost 10 years ago, and we were having a conference and Eric Thomas was getting ready to be one of the speakers. So he was just getting on the conference call to promote the event. So we had a phone call called the vitamin call. It was called the vitamin call. We had it every morning. And so the person that was over the vitamin call had Eric Thomas get on the vitamin call. So they only took 3 callers, y'all. Only 3 callers. I was the 3rd caller that they took on the phone. So I was literally driving to work, and when they was like, hello, and I'm like, hello. And I was like, oh my goodness, I was so nervous. So it was a real conversation because basically what I asked him about him overcoming adversities and how he was able to birth all of his, well, not all of them, but how he was able to just birth his vision out, and how, like, give me some, some steps or some pointers on how you were able to do that. And we started having a conversation, told him I was, from Chicago, and, he had been on the south side of Chicago and in Michigan. And so we had talked about that. But this phone conversation, number one, confirmed to me how I needed to write a book about my life, which was about having triplets at the age of 17 and how I was able to get through that journey of raising them and what that looked like. And before I had talked to Eric Thomas, I had already thought about writing a book, but I was not proactively like writing a book. It was just in the back of my head, like, okay, I need to write a book. So when he said that, and when he broke it down as far as, like, you mean to tell me that you had triplets and you didn't birth a book, and how he was saying he names his pain and giving birth to the pain. And he was, then the most important part was when he said, the only time there's an issue with adversity is if you don't give birth from it. And at that point, I was like, that is true, because there are a lot of adversity that I had went through in my life that I didn't give birth to anything. I didn't give birth to it. I didn't give birth to anything that was happening. I just got past it and then moved on. And then another one came, I got past it, and then I moved on. So when he said that, it took me some years to even come back to that, to realize what he was even saying. And so now it makes so much sense when I'm listening back to that conversation, which I didn't even know that I still had access to that conversation. It was posted on YouTube and I had the link. And so I put the link in and it came up, and I was like, wow, I still have this conversation. So it was a reminder to me, because at the moment of me having a conversation with Eric Thomas, and back then he was mostly known as E.T. the hip hop preacher, because his YouTube videos and his motivational Monday videos that he used to do. And it made me think about how, so at the time when I had this conversation with him, I still was like, how am I going to write a book though? Like when I thought about my life, I was like, it's so much. It was so much to the point that I felt overwhelmed. So you know how sometimes you can feel overwhelmed. So then you start procrastinating and you don't do anything. So that was pretty much me. I did get to a point where I started writing down different things that I want to put in the book. And when people find out I have triplets, they ask me all the time, like, how did I do it? I remember when the triplets was graduating from high school and they went on prom and they picture went viral. And I had all types of DMs about, oh my God, you had triplets. How did you do it? I have one child. I don't know what to do. And in that moment, I still didn't realize that this was something that I needed to birth right then, because it's a question that people really wanted to know the answer to. And so, because I couldn't see the full picture or the full vision of it, it was hard for me to form the book. And so, it took many years before I started writing the book. So when I moved to Texas, I went to this church, and at this church, they had a counseling session with licensed counselor. There was a licensed minister, there was a counselor and a therapist, and we had a church service where at the end of it, there was a Q&A session with the counselor. And I ended up taking some counseling sessions with this minister in her office, because I realized that one of the things that was stopping me from being able to birth this book was talking about the things that happened to me over my life, and I needed to get healed from that. Up until that point, which was only 6 years ago, y'all, up until that point, I had avoided, act like it didn't happen, tried to move past it, tried to ignore it. But I didn't realize how it was bleeding out in my relationships with people, especially my relationships with the men in my life. So while I was a person that was like always relationship or married, I was also a person that needed to be healed. And because I wasn't healed, I was not able to give my best self. I was not able to give the best version of who God created me to be. So started doing counseling, y'all, and I'm writing a book. And the person she was a counselor, she had just wrote a book as well. So I could relate to her and, get some pointers from her as well in regards to being able to get past the parts that I needed to get past. And it gave me clarity on how I was going to write the book. And basically, long story short, because this is if for people that are thinking about writing the book and may not understand or know how they're going to actually write it, understand this. This helped me. You do not have to write every single thing in one book. It could be multiple books that you write it in. The end result is, what is your vision for the book, and what is the purpose of wanting to release a book, and how it's going to help somebody when they read it. And so once I grasped that, I was able to start writing my book. And once I started writing my book, I made sure and was so happy that I was doing the therapy, because it was a lot of times I had to stop and I had to really reflect on what had happened and also understand how to move past that. So now that I've been to therapy, I'm not saying like, I never will go to therapy again, because I absolutely do believe in Jesus and therapy. And I'm an advocate for therapy. I believe that people should be whole and healthy. And I feel like you are able to be your best self. I'm excited about my future. I'm excited about both Bossy and Blessed podcast. I'm excited about your future in being bold, bossy, and blessed as well. And I just want to end with this show. And the reason why I wanted to do a podcast is because I wanted to make sure that my voice and my message is always to empower, restore, and transform when somebody is listening to my podcast. My website has different resource tools on there because I am known as the resource person, or the resource girl. I always have been. Even at work, people will always ask me questions. I'll be Googling, trying to figure out the answer. If I didn't have the answer, I'm always like just trying to provide resources because I really do want people to be transformed, and I do want people to have to be restored, and I want them to feel empowered when they listen to this podcast. And so now that I have let you all know about Bold, Bossy, and Blessed, as well as a little bit about me, now the next episode, we're going to have guests on this show, and now we'll be able to move more into the 3 pillars of this show, which is to empower, restore, and transform. So join me next Monday for another episode. Thank you for listening to another episode of Bold, Bossy, and Blessed podcast. Make sure you're following me on all social media platforms at Nikisa Green, and make sure you subscribe to this podcast as well. Until next time, be bold, make bossy moves, and stay blessed.